There are cases they tell you about in training, and then there are the ones they don't. The ones that don't make sense. The ones that keep you awake at night. This is one of those cases. A missing child. A witness who didn't exist. A message that no one should have ever read. And the moment I realized, some people don't just disappear. They get erased. Story 1. The House That Called 911. You know, cops love to swap weird stories. But the scariest ones? They don't come from people who like scary stories. They come from guys like me, guys who don't believe in ghosts. Or at least, I didn't. Not until the night the house called 911 on itself. It was a slow shift. Just me and my cruiser, sipping terrible gas station coffee, half listening to dispatch. Then the call came in. 911 call. Possible intruder. Address 1462 Harper Lane. No caller on the line. I pulled up my system, checking the address. Harper Lane. And my stomach tightened. That street had one house. And that house had been abandoned for years. Now, abandoned houses get calls sometimes. Homeless squatters. Kids messing around. But what made my skin crawl? The call came from a landline. A landline inside the house. A house with no power. No phone service. Nothing. I radioed back. Dispatch, are you sure on the source of the call? Dispatch hesitated. Affirmative. Call came from inside the house. I started driving. And for the first time in my career, I didn't want to answer a call. Something was watching me. Harper Lane was a dead-end road. No streetlights. No other houses. And there it was. A two-story corpse of a house. Boarded up windows. Collapsing porch. The kind of place kids tell stories about. As I stepped out of my cruiser, the wind stopped. No sounds. No bugs. No rustling trees. Like the whole world was holding its breath. My radio crackled. Unit 23 status? I pressed the button. On scene. House is vacant. Checking Param. Then I saw it. A shape. Inside the house. Second floor. A silhouette standing in the window. I flicked on my flashlight. And the second the beam hit the window, the figure stepped backward. Into the darkness. I reached for my gun. Inside the house, the feeling of being hunted. I should have waited for backup. But something about that place pulled me in. I stepped up to the front door. Unlocked. Pushed it open. The smell hit me first. Rotting wood. Mildew. And something else, something faint. Coppery. Like blood. I moved slow, sweeping my flashlight. Dust hung in the air, untouched for years. And then I saw them. Footprints. Fresh, wet footprints. Leading deeper into the house. My heart pounded. Someone was here. I followed, careful, quiet. Through a kitchen with a rotting table. Past a staircase that seemed too dark. Then I heard it. A whisper. Help me. Right behind me. I spun. Flashlight shaking. Gun up. Nothing. Then my radio crackled. Unit 23, you said the house was vacant? My throat was dry. Yeah. Silence. Then dispatch said something that made my blood go cold. Then who's standing in the window? The descent into madness. I turned slowly. The second floor window. And I swear to God, someone was looking down at me. Not moving. Just watching. I stepped toward the stairs. Something felt wrong. Like the air was thicker. Heavier. Then I noticed something. The footprints I'd been following? They weren't leading deeper into the house. They were leading out. Like someone had walked right past me. I gritted my teeth. I had two choices: run or go upstairs. And like an idiot, I went upstairs. The twist that shattered reality. The hallway stretched too long, like it wasn't built right. Like the house was bigger on the inside. I reached the second door on the right, the one the whisper came from. I turned the knob, and the door opened by itself. Inside, an empty room, except for one thing: a phone. An old rotary phone mounted on the wall, covered in dust, and ringing. I swallowed, picked it up. "Hello?" Silence. Then, a voice. My voice. "Unit 23 status?" It was my voice. From earlier. I dropped the phone. My blood turned ice. I staggered back. And that's when I saw it. The mirror. There was a reflection in it. But it wasn't me. It was a cop. Older uniform. Same badge number. And he looked terrified. Like he'd been trapped there for years. I ran. Sprinting down the stairs, out the front door, into my cruiser. I floored it. Didn't stop driving until I saw streetlights again. The next day, I looked up the house's history. And I found the last 911 call ever made from that landline, 10 years ago. By a cop. A cop investigating a 911 call from that house. He was never found. And the last thing dispatch heard from his radio? "Help me." So yeah? That was the night I stopped answering calls from abandoned houses. Because sometimes, the call isn't coming from the living. Story 2, The Thing in the Basement. There's something they don't tell you when you sign up for this job. Not every case can be explained. Sometimes you walk into something that just shouldn't exist. That's what happened to me the night I got the call to that house. The one with the basement door that wouldn't stay shut. It was a welfare check. Routine stuff. A neighbor called in, said the old man who lived next door hadn't been seen in over a week. Lights on all night, newspapers piling up. Dispatch sent me out, told me to knock, make sure he wasn't dead inside. I pulled up to the house just after midnight. A little, one-story home at the edge of the woods. Not abandoned, but definitely neglected. The yard was overgrown, the porch sagging under its own weight. But what got me? The front door was open. Just a crack. Like someone had stepped inside but never came back out. I knocked, announced myself. No answer. Stepping inside, I was hit with that stale, lifeless air. Like a place that hadn't been lived in for years. Except, there were dishes in the sink. Food rotting on the counter. A TV on in the living room, playing nothing but static. I called out again. Still nothing. That's when I heard it. A noise from the back of the house. A soft, rhythmic thump. Like something knocking. Over and over. Slow. Methodical. I followed the sound, flashlight shaking in my grip. Down a narrow hallway, past a bedroom that smelled like rotting meat. The noise got louder. Thump. 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 I stopped. It was coming from the basement door. I don't know why, but every instinct I had screamed at me not to open it. Something was off. The door had 7 different locks on it, deadbolts, chains, a sliding bar, all undone, dangling uselessly. I pressed my ear against the wood, held my breath, and that's when something on the other side knocked back. I stepped back fast, hard hammering. The door rattled. Just once. Like whatever was inside knew I was there. I pulled my radio. "Dispatch, I might have a break-in here. Possible suspect in the basement. Requesting backup." Silence. Then static. Then a voice. But it wasn't dispatch. It was me. Possible suspect in the basement. Requesting backup. My own voice. Word for word. But distorted. Wrong. Like something was repeating me. I nearly dropped the radio. That's when I noticed something else. The locks. The ones hanging loose on the basement door. They weren't installed to keep people out. They were installed to keep something in. And someone had unlocked them all. The doorknob twitched. Just a little. Like a breath. Then I heard the sound that still keeps me up at night. A whisper. From the other side. You let it out. Every hair on my body stood up. The door started to swing open. I did the only thing I could. I slammed it shut. Threw my weight against it. Bolted the locks back, one by one, hands shaking. As I slid the last chain into place, the knocking stopped. Then, a slow breath. Right against the wood. Then footsteps. Heavy. Wet. Walking back down into the basement. I didn't wait around. I ran out of that house, back to my cruiser, locked the doors, and sat there, gripping the wheel, waiting for backup that never came. Because here's the thing. When I called it in the next morning, dispatch told me something that made my stomach drop. That house? It had been empty for years. The old man who lived there? He'd been dead since 2003. Found in the basement. Torn apart. The neighbor who reported him missing? No one by that name had ever lived on that street. And the call? The one that sent me there in the first place? It never happened. No record of it. No audio. Nothing. I quit a month later. And sometimes, late at night, when my house is quiet, I hear knocking. Slow. Rhythmic. Right beneath my feet. Story 3. The man who wasn't there. Some cases stick with you. Not because they were violent. Not because they were bloody. But because they make you question everything. This was one of those cases. It started with a missing kid. 7-year-old boy. Name was Eli Carter. Vanished from his backyard while his mom was inside grabbing lemonade. A search went out. No signs of struggle. No forced entry. The yard was fenced, latched from the inside. No one saw anything. Except for one person. The old man across the street. I remember knocking on his door. The guy was in his late 70s, frail, sunken eyes like he hadn't slept in years. He didn't even ask why I was there. Just opened the door and said, "I didn't see him get taken. But I saw who took him." I froze. My heart picked up. "Who?" He licked his lips. "That's the thing, officer. I saw him. But he wasn't there." Pause, let that settle. I thought the guy was senile, but something about the way he said it made my stomach tighten. "You saw a man take Eli?" I pressed. The old man swallowed. Nodded. "What did he look like?" He opened his mouth, then stopped. Like he couldn't find the words. Then he just shook his head. "You wouldn't understand." I left frustrated. But I couldn't shake the way he looked at me. Like he knew something I didn't. 3 days passed. Search parties, news crews, FBI. No leads. Then, on the 4th day, the mom got a letter. No postage. No return address. Just a single sheet of paper, slipped under her front door. 5 words, written in perfect handwriting. "You let him see me." That's when everything changed. The old man across the street was found dead in his home. No signs of struggle. No wounds. Just sitting in his recliner, staring at the blank TV screen. Mouth open. Eyes wide. Frozen in absolute terror. No prints in the house. No forced entry. Just one thing out of place. A single sheet of paper on his coffee table. "You let him see me." This wasn't normal anymore. This was something else. We started digging into Eli's family. His dad had walked out when he was 2, leaving just Eli and his mom. But there was one strange detail. When Eli was born, his mom had listed a name under father on the birth certificate. A name that didn't exist. No records. No ID. No birth certificate. Nothing. Like the man had been completely erased. I asked her about it, and she just shut down. Wouldn't talk. Wouldn't even look at me. She only said one thing. He found us. A week later, a jogger found Eli's body. He was sitting on a park bench, wrapped in a clean white sheet. His eyes were closed. He looked like he was sleeping, but his heart was missing. Not cut out. Not surgically removed. Just gone. Like it had never been there to begin with. And in his hands, a piece of paper. You let him see me. We never found out who took him. There were no leads. No DNA. No security footage. Just a few things that still keep me up at night. The cameras at the park. They caught the moment Eli appeared on the bench. Not when someone left him. Not when he was placed there. Just one frame, he wasn't there. The next, he was. The old man? We did a background check. He had no family. No job history. No records of existing at all. Just a lease agreement for the house, signed in 1982. And in the spot where his name should be, it was blank. And the final thing. The part that still makes me sick. The handwriting on the notes? We had it analyzed. Compared it to everything in the system. It didn't match Eli's mom. Didn't match the old man. But it did match something. Eli's own handwriting. The same shaky, careful way he wrote his name on his kindergarten homework. The same exact style. Like he had written those notes himself. Years before he ever learned how to spell. I don't work missing persons anymore. Because sometimes, people don't just go missing. Sometimes, they get erased. And sometimes, they come back. Eli Carter was never supposed to be found. And maybe, I was never supposed to remember him. But late at night, I still see his face. The same empty stare. The same trembling hands, gripping that final note. You let him see me. And every time I close my eyes, I wonder, did I let him see me too? Some mysteries should stay unsolved.